Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The twin suns of Zephyria scorched the desolate landscape, their merciless rays beating down on the rusted hull of Harold's freighter. He squinted through the cockpit's dust-caked viewport, surveying the barren expanse stretching to the horizon. Nothing but sand and rock as far as the eye could see. "Some spaceport," he muttered, powering down the engines. The ship settled onto the cracked landing pad with a groan of protest. Harold ran a hand through his sweat-dampened hair, trying to quell the anxiety gnawing at his gut. He'd made dozens of runs to backwater planets before, but something about this place set him on edge. Maybe it was the cargo. The sealed crates in his hold weren't exactly legal, at least not out here on the frontier. But the payoff would be worth the risk. One big score and he could finally quit this life, settle down somewhere quiet. Harold checked his reflection in a tarnished panel, smoothing the wrinkles from his jacket. No use looking like some nervous rookie. He'd stroll out cool as ice, find the buyer, make the exchange, and be on his way before anyone was the wiser. The hatch hissed open and a wave of scorching air assaulted him. Harold squinted against the glare, fumbling for his sunglasses. As his eyes adjusted, a flash of blue caught his attention. She strode across the sun-baked tarmac with predatory grace, her cerulean skin gleaming like polished sapphire. A skin-tight black top hugged her curves, leaving little to the imagination. Combat boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each purposeful step. Harold's mouth went dry. He'd seen his share of alien beauties in his travels, but this woman was something else entirely. As she drew closer, he found himself mesmerized by piercing silver eyes that seemed to look right through him. A coiled whip hung at her hip, and Harold noticed the glint of a sheriff's badge pinned to her top. His stomach dropped. Of all the rotten luck. "Well, well," the blue-skinned goddess drawled, crossing her arms. "What do we have here?" Harold plastered on his most charming smile. "Just a humble trader looking to do some business, ma'am. Harold Spencer, at your service." He extended a hand. The sheriff ignored it, those silver eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Uh-huh. And what exactly are you trading way out here on the ass end of the galaxy, Mr. Spencer?" "Oh, this and that. Whatever the market demands." Harold shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "I go where the credits take me." A smirk tugged at the corner of her full lips. "Is that so?" Before Harold could react, she had him by the collar. With surprising strength, she yanked him close until their faces were mere inches apart. This close, he could see flecks of starlight in her eyes. "Listen up, pretty boy," she purred. "I'm Sheriff Mary, and nothing happens on my planet without me knowing about it. So why don't you tell me what's really in that ship of yours, Harold swallowed hard, caught between fear and an unexpected surge of arousal. "I told you, just basic goods and supplies. Nothing special." Mary's grip tightened. "Wrong answer." In a blur of motion, she spun him around and slammed him face first against the hull of his ship. Harold grunted as the scorching metal seared his cheek. "Last chance, handsome," Mary growled in his ear. "What's the cargo?" Harold's mind raced. He could feel the heat of her body pressed against his back, smell the intoxicating scent of her skin. It was making it hard to think straight. All right," he gasped. "It's, exotic pets, rare creatures from Earth, totally harmless, I swear." Mary was silent for a long moment. Then she spun him around again, silver eyes boring into his. "Exotic pets," she repeated flatly. Harold nodded, trying his best to look innocent. "That's right. Furry little things, very popular with rich folks out here. You know how it is." Mary's expression was unreadable. Then, without warning, she grabbed his jaw and pried his mouth open. "Hey!" Harold protested, voice muffled by her probing fingers. "What are you—" "Checking your teeth," Mary said matter-of-factly, "making sure you're not smuggling anything in there." She peered into his mouth, humming thoughtfully. Not bad. You humans have such strange dentition." Harold spluttered indignantly as she released him. "Was that really necessary?" Mary shrugged. "Standard procedure. Now turn around and spread 'em. Time for a more thorough inspection." Harold's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." The crack of her whip made him jump. "Does this look like the face of someone who's joking?" Mary's voice was steel. Hands on the hull, legs apart. Now. Cheeks burning, Harold complied. He flinched as he felt Mary's hands roaming over his body, patting him down with clinical efficiency. My, she murmured. "What have we here?" Harold tensed as her hands moved lower. This was beyond humiliating. And yet, a part of him was undeniably aroused by her domineering manner. "Interesting anatomy you humans have," Mary commented, her touch lingering. "Very responsive." Harold bit back a groan. "Are we done here?" he ground out. Mary chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent shivers down his spine. "Not even close, sugar. Now, let's have a look inside that ship of yours, shall we?" She produced a set of glowing manacles. Before Harold could protest, she had his wrists secured behind his back. "Is this really necessary?" he grumbled as she marched him toward the ship's hatch. "Oh, absolutely," Mary replied cheerfully. "Can't have you trying anything foolish now, can we?" The cargo hold was stiflingly hot, the air thick with the acrid smell of engine oil and something else. Harold's heart pounded as Mary prowled between the stacks of crates, running her hands over the sealed containers. "Exotic pets, you said?" She arched an eyebrow at him. "Funny. I don't hear any squeaking or scurrying." Harold forced a laugh. "Well, you know, they're, hibernating. Long journey and all that." Mary's silver eyes narrowed. With a swift motion, she activated the release on one of the crates. The lid hissed open, revealing— Well, Mary drawled. "These are some mighty peculiar-looking pets you've got here, Mr. Spencer." Harold winced as she held up one of the glowing crystals, its facets catching the dim light. "Care to explain why you're hauling a shipment of illegal Nova crystals?" Mary's voice was dangerously soft. "These little beauties are strictly contraband out here." "Would you believe me if I said I had no idea those were in there?" Harold tried, flashing his most winning smile. Mary's answering grin was predatory. "Oh, honey, you are in a world of trouble." She grabbed him by the arm, fingers digging into his bicep as she steered him out of the ship. Harold's mind raced, searching for some way out of this mess. "Look," he said as they emerged into the sweltering heat, "maybe we can work something out? I'm sure a smart, beautiful woman like yourself can see the potential here. We could split the profits. No one has to know." Mary's laughter cut him off. "Are you trying to bribe me, pretty boy? That's adorable." She patted his cheek condescendingly. "But I'm afraid it's going to take a lot more than empty flattery to get you out of this one." Harold's shoulders slumped in defeat. "So what happens now? You've got some kind of jail around here, I assume?" Mary's smirk widened. "Oh, sugar. This dustball barely has a functional landing pad, let alone a proper detention center." She began leading him across the cracked tarmac. "No, you'll be staying with me until I figure out what to do with you." Harold blinked in surprise. "With you? As in, at your place?" "That's right." Mary's grip on his arm tightened. "Hope you don't mind close quarters. And don't get any funny ideas. I sleep light and I'm a hell of a lot stronger than I look." As they made their way through the ramshackle settlement that passed for a spaceport, Harold couldn't help but notice the way other beings scrambled to get out of Mary's path. Clearly, the blue-skinned beauty commanded serious respect or fear in these parts. He also couldn't help but notice the way her hips swayed as she walked, the play of powerful muscles beneath her cerulean skin. Despite his predicament, he found himself captivated by her otherworldly allure. Mary's quarters turned out to be a squat, fortified structure on the outskirts of town. She palmed open a heavy security door and shoved Harold inside. The interior was sparse but neat, illuminated by soft blue lighting that complemented Mary's skin tone. Harold's gaze was drawn to a massive bed dominating one corner of the room, its sheets a shimmering material he didn't recognize. "Like what you see." Mary's amused voice startled him from his thoughts. Harold felt heat rise to his cheeks. It's very nice." She chuckled, moving to a control panel on one wall. "Make yourself at home. You'll be here for a while." As Mary tapped at the panel, a slight shudder ran through her lithe frame. She frowned, pressing a hand to her forehead. "You all right?" Harold asked, genuine concern creeping into his voice despite himself. Mary waved him off. "It's nothing. Just a little warm in here." But as she turned to face him, Harold could see a feverish gleam in her silver eyes. A light sheen of sweat glistened on her blue skin. "Are you sure?" he pressed. "You don't look so good." Mary's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand. This shouldn't be happening for another 3 cycles at least." She stumbled slightly, catching herself on the edge of a nearby table. Harold instinctively moved to steady her, forgetting his bound hands. "Hey, easy there," he said softly. "What's going on?" Mary looked up at him, those mesmerizing eyes wide with a mix of confusion and growing hunger. It's my season, my time of heat. But it's too early. It doesn't make sense unless—" Her gaze raked over him with new intensity, lingering on the planes of his chest, the curve of his jaw. Harold felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. "Unless what?" he asked, voice hoarse. Mary's tongue darted out to wet her lips. "Unless something triggered it, or someone." She took a step closer, eliminating the space between them. Harold's breath caught in his throat as he felt the heat radiating from her body. "Tell me, Harold," Mary purred, trailing a finger down his chest. "Have you ever been with an alien before?" Harold swallowed hard. I can't say that I have." A predatory smile spread across Mary's face. "Well then, I think it's time for some cultural exchange, don't you?" Before Harold could respond, Mary's lips crashed against his in a searing kiss. All thoughts of escape, of the trouble he was in, evaporated in an instant. There was only the intoxicating taste of her, the press of her body against his. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Harold's head was spinning. "Wow," he managed. "That was—" "Just the beginning," Mary growled. With a flick of her wrist, the manacles fell away from Harold's wrists. "Now, let's see what else that fascinating human body of yours can do." As Mary pulled him toward the bed, Harold had a fleeting thought that this was definitely not how he'd expected his smuggling run to end. But as her nimble fingers began working at his clothes, he decided there were far worse ways to be detained. The twin suns of Zephyria sank below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. And in a small room on the edge of a dusty spaceport, an unlikely pair embarked on a passionate exploration of alien anatomy that would change both their lives forever. The first rays of Zephyria's twin suns crept through the narrow window, painting Mary's quarters in a warm golden glow. Harold stirred, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. As the events of the previous night came flooding back, a mixture of emotions washed over him: exhilaration, confusion, and a gnawing sense of guilt. He turned his head to find Mary already awake, those mesmerizing silver eyes studying him intently. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer in the early morning light, making her look even more otherworldly. "Morning, pretty boy," she purred, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Sleep well?" Harold couldn't help but grin. Better than I have in years, actually, though I'm still not entirely sure this isn't all some wild dream. Mary chuckled, trailing a finger along his jaw. Oh, it's real all right, but playtime's over. We've got business to discuss. The shift in her tone sobered Harold instantly. He sat up, running a hand through his tousled hair. Right, about that cargo. Mary's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. Harold took a deep breath. It was time to come clean. Look, I know how this looks, but the truth is, I had no idea what was really in those crates. Uh-huh, Mary said skeptically. And I suppose they just magically appeared in your hold. Not exactly, Harold sighed. I was approached by a guy on Earth. Real, shady character, but he was offering serious credits. Said all I had to do was make a simple delivery run out here to the frontier. Swore up and down it was just some harmless tech components. Mary raised an eyebrow. And you believed him? Harold shrugged helplessly. I know. I should have known better. But things haven't exactly been going great for me lately. I'm drowning in debt, about to lose my ship. I was desperate. He met Mary's gaze, willing her to see the sincerity in his eyes. I swear, if I'd known it was Nova Crystals, I never would have taken the job. I'm not exactly keen on spending the rest of my life in a prison colony. Mary was silent for a long moment, those silver eyes seeming to peer into his very soul. Finally, she spoke. You're either the galaxy's worst liar, or you're telling the truth. It's the truth, Harold insisted. Every word. Mary nodded slowly. All right, let's say I believe you. That still leaves us with a shipload of illegal crystals and a whole lot of questions. Harold's brow furrowed. Us? A predatory grin spread across Mary's face. That's right, sugar. You and me. See, I've got a feeling there's more to this little smuggling operation than meets the eye. And after last night, she licked her lips suggestively. Well, let's just say I'm not quite ready to turn you over to the authorities just yet. Harold's heart raced. Was she really suggesting what he thought she was? You mean you want to investigate? Together? Mary's grin widened. Now you're catching on. Besides, I've got a personal stake in this now. That hot season you triggered? It's not supposed to happen for at least another 3 months. Something about you set it off early, and I intend to find out why. She leaned in close, her breath hot against his ear. So, what do you say, Harold? Feel like playing detective with me? A shiver ran down Harold's spine. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea, that he should cut his losses and run. But as he looked into Mary's captivating eyes, he knew he was already lost. I'm in, he said, sealing his fate with a roguish grin. Mary's answering smile was positively wicked. Excellent. Now, let's get dressed. We've got some lowlifes to interrogate. As they made their way through the dusty streets of the spaceport settlement, Harold couldn't help but marvel at the change in Mary. Gone was the sultry seductress of the night before. In her place strode a force of nature, her whip coiled at her hip, and a look of steely determination in her eyes. Locals scrambled to get out of her path, casting fearful glances their way. So, what's our first move? Harold asked, trying to keep up with her purposeful stride. Mary's lips quirked in a half-smile. We're going to have a little chat with Grax the Hutt. If anyone knows about illegal shipments coming through this rock, it's him. Harold's eyes widened. Wait, Grax? As in the crime lord? Are you sure that's wise? Mary shot him an amused look. Scared, pretty boy. No, Harold lied. Just, assessing the risks. She laughed, a sound that sent a thrill through him despite the circumstances. Relax. Grax and I have an understanding. He stays out of my way. I let him keep certain appendages attached to his slimy hide. They arrived at a seedy-looking cantina on the outskirts of town. As they stepped inside, the raucous chatter died down, all eyes turning to focus on the unlikely pair. Mary strode confidently to the bar, Harold trailing behind her. The bartender, a grizzled four-armed alien, eyed them warily. "Where's Grax?" Mary demanded without preamble. The bartender's eyes darted nervously to a curtained-off area in the back. "He's, not seeing anyone at the moment, Sheriff." Mary's hand went to her whip. "He'll see me." As if on cue, a booming voice echoed from behind the curtain. "Let them pass, Crex. No need for unpleasantness." Mary smirked, gesturing for Harold to follow her. They pushed through the heavy curtain to find themselves in a dimly lit chamber. Sprawled on an enormous cushion was Grax the Hutt, his bulbous form quivering with each labored breath. "Ah, Sheriff Mary," Grax wheezed, his beady eyes glinting with malice. "To what do I owe the pleasure, and who's your friend?" "This is Harold," Mary said curtly. "We're here about a shipment of Nova crystals that came through recently. Ring any bells?" Grax's laugh was more of a wet gurgle. "My dear, you know I don't involve myself in such trifling matters." "Cut the crap, Grax," Mary snapped. "Someone's running crystals through my turf, and I want to know who." The Hutt's eyes narrowed. "And why should I help you, Sheriff? What's in it for me?" Mary's whip cracked, the tip stopping mere inches from Grax's face. "How about I don't turn you inside out and use your hide for a new pair of boots?" Harold watched the exchange with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He dealt with his share of unsavory characters in his time as a trader, but this was a whole new level. Grax, however, seemed unimpressed by the threat. His gaze shifted to Harold, a sly smile spreading across his grotesque features. "Perhaps we can make a deal," the Hutt purred. "I might have some information of value, but first, a little entertainment." Mary's eyes narrowed. "What kind of entertainment?" Grax's smile widened. "A simple contest. If your human friend here can best my champion in hand-to-hand combat, I'll tell you everything I know." Harold's stomach dropped. I'm not sure that's such a good deal," Mary cut him off, her silver eyes gleaming with determination. Before Harold could protest further, a hidden door slid open, and a massive, muscle-bound alien stepped into the room. Its four arms rippled with barely contained power, and cruel horns protruded from its skull. "Meet Krogar," Grax announced gleefully, "undefeated champion of the fighting pits." Harold swallowed hard. "Mary, I really don't think," but Mary was already shoving him towards the center of the room. "You've got this, pretty boy," she whispered fiercely. "Just remember what I taught you." As Krogar advanced, cracking its knuckles menacingly, Harold racked his brain. What had Mary taught him? They'd spent more time in bed than training. The first punch came lightning fast, catching Harold square in the jaw. He staggered back, stars exploding in his vision. Dimly, he heard Grax's wheezing laughter. "Come on, Harold!" Mary's voice cut through the haze. "You're quicker than him. Use it." Shaking off the blow, Harold focused. She was right. He might not have the alien's raw strength, but he was faster. As Krogar lunged again, Harold ducked and weaved, narrowly avoiding the crushing blows. For several tense minutes they danced around each other, Harold relying on his agility to stay just out of reach. But he knew he couldn't keep it up forever. He needed to end this, and fast. That's when he remembered something Mary had mentioned during one of their training sessions, a particularly sensitive spot on many alien species. As Krogar charged in for another attack, Harold took a calculated risk. He feinted left, then dropped low, driving his fist upward with all his might. The blow connected solidly with a spot just below the alien's lowest set of ribs. Krogar's eyes bulged comically, and it let out a strangled wheeze before collapsing to the ground in a quivering heap. The room fell silent. Harold stood there, panting, hardly able to believe what had just happened. Then Mary's whoop of triumph broke the spell. "That's my boy," she crowed, rushing over to plant a searing kiss on his lips. Grax's expression was thunderous. "Impossible," he sputtered. "You must have cheated." Mary turned to the hut, her eyes glittering dangerously. "A deal's a deal, Grax. Now talk." The crime lord glowered, but eventually began to spill what he knew. As Harold listened, the pieces started to fall into place. The crystals, the mysterious Earth contact, the setup. It was all part of a much larger operation. As they left the cantina, Harold's head was spinning. "So, what now?" he asked. Mary's grin was fierce. "Now, we follow the trail, and when we find the bastards behind all this—" She cracked her whip for emphasis. Over the next few weeks, Harold found himself swept up in a whirlwind of investigation and adventure unlike anything he'd ever experienced. By day, they chased leads across the dusty plains of Zephyria, interrogating suspects and piecing together clues. By night, well, Mary's hot season showed no signs of abating, and Harold was more than happy to assist in her research into human anatomy. As they worked together, Harold found himself continually amazed by Mary's skills. She had a way of extracting information from even the most tight-lipped sources, alternating between charm and intimidation with practiced ease. For his part, Harold surprised himself with his own resourcefulness. Years of navigating the gray areas of interstellar trade had honed his instincts, and he often picked up on details Mary might have missed. They made a formidable team, and word quickly spread through the criminal underworld of Zephyria. The blue-skinned sheriff and her human partner became a force to be reckoned with. But as they drew closer to unraveling the mystery, the danger intensified. More than once, they found themselves in pitched battles with hired goons sent to stop their investigation. During one particularly harrowing firefight in an abandoned warehouse, Harold proved his worth beyond a doubt. As they crouched behind a stack of crates, plasma bolts sizzling overhead, he noticed a stack of volatile chemicals nearby. "Cover me!" he shouted to Mary, then made a mad dash across the open floor. Mary laid down suppressing fire with her blaster, giving Harold just enough time to reach the chemicals. With practiced hands, he quickly rigged up an improvised explosive device. "Fire in the hole!" he yelled, hurling the makeshift bomb towards their attackers. The resulting explosion rocked the warehouse, sending their assailants flying. As the smoke cleared, Mary stared at Harold with a mixture of shock and admiration. "Where the hell did you learn to do that?" she demanded. Harold shrugged, trying to play it cool despite his racing heart. "You pick up a few tricks, trading on the frontier." Mary's answering grin was positively feral. "You are full of surprises, aren't you?" As they made their way back to Mary's quarters, flushed with victory and adrenaline, Harold realized something had shifted between them. This was more than just a fling triggered by alien biology. They'd become true partners, in every sense of the word, but their moment of triumph was short-lived. As they approached Mary's building, Harold noticed something was off. The door stood slightly ajar, and there were scorch marks around the lock. Mary tensed beside him, her hand going to her blaster. "Stay behind me," she whispered. They crept inside, senses on high alert. The place had been ransacked, drawers emptied and furniture overturned. "Looks like someone didn't appreciate our investigation," Harold muttered. Mary nodded grimly. "They were looking for something. But what—" Her words were cut off by the sound of a blaster being charged. They whirled to find a figure emerging from the shadows, weapon trained on Mary's chest. "I believe," a cold voice said, "that it's time we had a little chat." Harold's heart hammered in his chest as he stared down the barrel of the blaster. The figure holding it stepped fully into view, revealing a tall, imposing man in an immaculate Earth Federation uniform. His cold gray eyes studied them with detached amusement. "Commander Blackthorn," Mary growled, her own weapon trained on the intruder. "I should have known you'd slither out of your hole eventually." Blackthorn's thin lips curled into a humorless smile. Now, Sheriff. Is that any way to greet an old friend?" Harold's mind raced. This was the corrupt Earth official they'd been hunting? He looked more like a decorated war hero than a criminal mastermind. "Friend?" Mary scoffed. "Last I checked, friends don't ransack each other's homes or point guns at one another." "Mere precautions," Blackthorn said smoothly. "You've been asking some rather inconvenient questions lately. I thought it best we clear the air." His gaze shifted to Harold. "And you must be the troublesome smuggler I've heard so much about. I must say, you've caused quite a stir in my operation." Harold tensed, ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. But Mary's subtle head shake kept him in check. She was playing for time, assessing the situation. "Your operation?" Mary pressed. "And here I thought you were just a middleman. How deep does this corruption go, Blackthorn?" The commander's eyes glittered dangerously. "Deeper than you can imagine, my dear. The Nova Crystal trade is just the tip of the iceberg. We have plans for this sector that would make your blue skin crawl." As Blackthorn monologued, Harold noticed a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. A shadow detached itself from the darkened doorway, creeping silently towards the commander. Mary must have seen it too, because she suddenly launched into a tirade, drawing Blackthorn's full attention. "You sanctimonious bastard! You think you can just waltz in here and—" The distraction worked. The shadow resolved into a hulking alien enforcer, raising a wicked-looking vibroblade. But at the last second, Blackthorn whirled, his blaster finding a new target. Time seemed to slow. Harold saw the enforcer's blade descending, saw Blackthorn's finger tightening on the trigger. Without conscious thought, he hurled himself forward. The blaster discharged with a searing flash of energy. Pain exploded in Harold's shoulder as the bolt grazed him, but his momentum carried him into Blackthorn. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Chaos erupted. Mary's whip cracked, wrapping around the enforcer's weapon arm. She yanked hard, sending the vibroblade clattering across the floor. In the same fluid motion, she brought her blaster to bear on Blackthorn. "Don't move." Her voice was pure ice. Blackthorn, pinned beneath Harold, let out a wheezing laugh. "Well played, Sheriff. But do you really think this changes anything? I have powerful friends. This little setback is nothing." Harold struggled to his feet, clutching his injured shoulder. "Maybe, but I bet those friends won't be too happy when they find out you've been skimming profits off the top." Blackthorn's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" With his good arm, Harold reached into his jacket, producing a data chip. "Amazing what you can find when you know where to look. Detailed records of every credit you've siphoned from the organization. I wonder how your friends would react if this information were to fall into their hands." It was a bluff, of course. The chip was blank, a decoy Harold had prepared for just such an occasion. But Blackthorn didn't need to know that. The commander's composure cracked. "You're lying. There's no way you could have—" "Want to risk it?" Mary cut in, her blaster never wavering. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to call off your goons, hand over control of your operation, and turn yourself in to the proper authorities. In exchange, we don't release this information to every crime lord and rival you've double-crossed." Blackthorn's eyes darted between them, weighing his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" Mary's grin was triumphant. "That's why I'm the sheriff, sugar." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Blackthorn, true to his word, ordered his remaining forces to stand down. Harold and Mary worked together to secure the prisoners and gather evidence. As the adrenaline faded, the pain in Harold's shoulder intensified. Mary noticed his grimace and immediately switched to caretaker mode. "Sit," she ordered, guiding him to a chair. "Let me take a look at that." Her touch was surprisingly gentle as she examined the wound. "Could have been a lot worse," she murmured. "A few centimeters to the left." And she trailed off, but Harold caught the flicker of emotion in her eyes. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm okay. We both are." Mary met his gaze, a fierce intensity burning in those silver depths. Without warning, she pulled him into a searing kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Harold couldn't help but grin. "Not that I'm complaining, but what was that for?" Mary's answering smile was softer than he'd ever seen it. "For being you. For jumping in front of a blaster bolt like an idiot. For everything." A comfortable silence fell between them as Mary bandaged his shoulder. Harold found himself marveling at how natural it felt, this easy intimacy they'd developed. "So," he ventured after a while, "what happens now?" Mary's hand stilled. "Well, there's still a mountain of paperwork to deal with. Statements to take, evidence to process. The Nova Crystal Trade Network won't dismantle itself." "Right," Harold nodded, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. "I suppose you'll want me to stick around until all that's sorted out?" Mary's eyes narrowed. "Harold Spencer, are you fishing for an invitation to stay?" Heat rose to Harold's cheeks. "What? No, I just meant—" "Because, if you are," Mary continued, a mischievous glint in her eye, "you should know that I have a strict policy against fraternizing with known criminals." Harold's heart sank. "Oh, I see. Well, I wouldn't want to compromise your—" Mary silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Lucky for you, you're not a criminal anymore. You're a hero who helped bring down a major crime syndicate." Hope blossomed in Harold's chest. "Does that mean—" "It means," Mary said, pulling him close, "that I'm not letting you out of my sight anytime soon, pretty boy. Someone's got to keep you out of trouble." Harold's grin threatened to split his face. "Yes, ma'am." As the twin suns of Zephyria began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, Harold found himself filled with a sense of contentment he'd never known before. For the first time in years, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. Beside him, Mary let out a contented sigh. "You know, I've been thinking." "Dangerous pastime," Harold quipped, earning himself a playful swat. "I'm serious," Mary continued. "This place could use a deputy, someone to help keep the peace, maybe do a little trading on the side. Keep things running smoothly." Harold's eyebrows shot up. "Are you offering me a job?" Mary shrugged, a coy smile playing at her lips. "Maybe. Depends on how you answer my next question." "Which is—" She turned to face him fully, those mesmerizing silver eyes holding his gaze. "How do you feel about making this arrangement a bit more permanent?" Harold's breath caught in his throat. "Mary, are you asking me to—" "Marry me?" she finished. "Yeah, I guess I am. So what do you say, Harold? Feel like being my partner in every sense of the word?" Joy unlike anything he'd ever known welled up inside him. Harold pulled Mary close, pouring every ounce of love and passion he felt into a searing kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Harold rested his forehead against hers. "I say, what took you so long to ask?" Mary's laughter, bright and free, rang out across the desert landscape. And as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Harold knew that his greatest adventure was just beginning. 1 year later, the market square of New Hope bustled with activity, a far cry from the desolate outpost it had been just a year ago. Beings of all species haggled over goods, the air filled with a cacophony of alien languages and the enticing aromas of exotic foods. At the center of it all stood Harold, carefully examining a shipment of rare earth spices. His trained eye picked out irregularities, ensuring everything was above board. "Looking good, Deputy," a familiar voice purred in his ear. Harold turned to find Mary sidling up beside him, her pregnancy-rounded belly straining against that infamous black top. "Sheriff," he greeted with a grin, pulling her close for a quick kiss. "Shouldn't you be resting?" Mary rolled her eyes. "Please. I'm pregnant, not made of glass. Besides, someone's got to make sure you're not slacking off." Harold's retort was cut short by a commotion near one of the stalls. A gruff-looking Arcturian was getting into a heated argument with a Rigelian merchant. "Duty calls," Mary sighed. "Want to handle this one, Deputy?" Harold cracked his knuckles dramatically. "With pleasure, ma'am." As he strode towards the disturbance, Harold marveled at how much had changed in just a year. New Hope had blossomed into a thriving trade hub with Mary and himself at its center. The Nova Crystal network had been dismantled, replaced by legitimate business opportunities that were transforming the entire sector. And perhaps most amazingly of all, he and Mary were about to start a family of their own. By the time Harold returned, having smoothed over the dispute with a combination of charm and stern authority, Mary had settled onto a nearby bench. He joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Nice work," she murmured, leaning into him. "You're getting pretty good at this law enforcement thing." Harold chuckled. "I learned from the best." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the twin suns begin their descent towards the horizon. The sky blazed with vibrant oranges and purples, a sight that never failed to take Harold's breath away. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Mary mused, her hand absently rubbing her swollen belly. "Sometimes I still think I'm going to wake up and find this has all been some crazy dream." Harold squeezed her gently. "If it is a dream, I don't ever want to wake up." Mary turned to face him, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, I never did tell you how I knew you were special right from the start." "Oh?" Harold raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." "It was when I first arrested you," Mary said with a grin. "When I checked your teeth." Harold groaned. "Are you ever going to let me live that down?" Mary's laughter rang out, drawing smiles from nearby passers-by. "Never. But seriously, there was just something about you. I knew you were going to change my life." Harold's heart swelled with emotion. He cupped Mary's face gently, marveling at the depth of love he saw reflected in those silver eyes. "You changed mine, too," he said softly, "in ways I never could have imagined." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in a dazzling array of colors, Harold and Mary shared a tender kiss. And in that moment, surrounded by the life they'd built together, both knew that their greatest adventure was still to come. Dear listeners, congratulations. You've made it to the end of our interstellar romance without succumbing to space madness or spontaneously triggering your own hot season. We hope you enjoyed this wild ride across the galaxy, filled with smugglers, sheriffs, and more sexual tension than a malfunctioning gravity generator. If you've learned anything from Harold and Mary's adventure, let it be this: love knows no boundaries, not even species barriers or questionable cargo manifests. And remember, the next time you're arrested on a distant planet, that invasive tooth check might just be the start of a beautiful relationship. We'd like to thank the Intergalactic Broadcasting Commission for not censoring the more colorful aspects of our tale. A special shout-out goes to Grax the Hutt for providing an excellent villain without sliming up our recording equipment. To our human listeners, may you find your own blue-skinned space beauty or handsome rogue to share sunsets with. And to our alien audience, we apologize for any inaccuracies in our depiction of your mating habits. No offense intended, we're only human after all. Lastly, a heartfelt thank you to you, our devoted listener, for sticking with us through hyperspace jumps, shootouts, and impromptu anatomy lessons. Without you, this story would be nothing more than space dust floating in the void. Stay curious, keep exploring, and always remember, in space, no one can hear you flirt, but they can definitely see you blush. Until our next cosmic adventure, your grateful storytellers. P.S. If you happen to come across any nova crystals during your travels, please contact your local authorities. Or better yet, find yourself a sexy sheriff to turn them into. Results may vary.